Welcome back to Stu Structures. We're here to continue our build on Sparky's house with this volume 3 in the series, so stay tuned. So welcome back to Sparky's house build. Like I said earlier, this is the third one in the series, and we're going to take a few to do this. I don't know, the house is a little involved, so it's taking me a little time, and life keeps throwing things at me that is taking my time away from this every now and then. So we'll see how far we can get this week and continue on with this build. I am Mark Stewart. This is Stu Structures. Sit back, have a cup of coffee or whatever you want to drink, and enjoy this. We're going to pick up where we left off last week, and we had this front part of the front wall together at that point. And you know, we had started some of these other walls, so we're going to continue on with working with those walls and start some more walls in this video. This front wall I want to go ahead and get a good start on, and you know, I'm going to go more into how I frame out all these individual windows, you know, over and over and over in this video. But you can see here that I got all these framed out on this end wall and went ahead and put the plexiglass or the glass in the windows, and you know, got it ready so I can connect it to that wall that we had already started from the front. Now this will get a porch roof out over a porch and a kind of a deck or porch area, which will be added on to this after we get the building assembled. But you know, that's one more wall here that we can connect to the front of the house, and you know, and it's starting to show at least a little bit of some shape of a house. Now we're going to start working on this side wall here next, and you know, there's two different wood sidings on this. There's, you know, different windows in this and a little bit of other detail stuff that we'll add to it a little bit later on. But to begin with, I'm going to use this same board and batten wood siding, and you know, one width of this isn't long enough, so I've got to make a couple of widths to give me the overall dimension of that part of the building that I need to make. I cut the front wall to a 45-degree angle where it meets the front wall of the house, and I go ahead and lay out the windows on the wall. Then I come back and cut those out, and you know, that's the only two windows in this whole side of the house. Now they are odd windows, so you know, I'm just coming back and framing those out with that plastic like I did the other windows before. And you know, this is how I do the archways. I took the piece that I cut out of the window and just trimmed a slight bit off the edge, and then I can put the plastic up in there and put glue on it and force it into place with this wood as a wedge and get it to adhere around that radius for that circle. Now while I'm working on this, I went ahead and cut these three back walls of the, you know, real small board siding that's different from the rest of the house. I went ahead and cut 45-degree angles on the corners for the back walls where they're going to meet, so that I have a good joint in the corners. And I went ahead and found some square stock, because a lot of these panels are starting to warp on me as I add the gray paint to the front of them, so I'm going to have to start putting some backing on these walls. So that's exactly what I do. I put a real big piece on the bottom so it could be mounted to layout or something readily, and just some smaller pieces above, and put gray paint on the outside of the wall once it's together. And you know, we have the basic overall wall together for that side. So we're just going to continue on now with framing out these windows and finish this side. And you know, I put the outside frame all the way around the windows to begin with. Then I come back, and the other thick stock I need to add is in between where the major window panes come. So the top of this window gets one, and then I add all that small trim in and around the sides of the windows that the you know, the glass will come into. And then I add the center pieces of these windows with some smaller styrene. I think this is 20 by 20 styrene here. And come back and put the rest of the mullions in place with that same 20 by 20 once that other is set up. And you know, the windows are totally framed out. Then I come back and add the clear styrene for glass behind them, and that's, one wall totally done at this point. And the whole end of the house then can be mounted to this other wall, and it's starting to take shape. It's not just a flat surface at this point. So we're going to continue on now with working on around the back walls of this house. And there's a whole lot of lines on this board because I had to keep playing with it till the overall layout looked right on this. But then once I figured out exactly how I wanted it, I went back and cut out all those holes. Now I did go ahead and cut this other piece for the other side of that wall, and went ahead and put a 45 degree on the back corner of it as well, and went ahead and laid out the one window that's in this wall in the back porch. Now remember, this does have the one-story structure that comes out into this panel to some degree. But then I go ahead and put the gray paint on it, and now I'm going to start framing out the window. And, most of these windows like this that have one support in them take quite a few pieces to do. And then I use that same square stock to come back and just give some rigidity to those walls so that they don't warp, with this gray paint on them. It just seems to tend to pull the wood, and it does make it warp. So with this on there, that stops that. And I come back and just start adding the framing inside the holes for all the windows. I do this like I did all of them. I add the outside frame first. The top, I use that same cutout piece like I did the other arched window to hold that piece in place while the arch glued in place. And then I start adding the small framework in as well, and just continue on with this. The sliding glass door was a bigger one, and I lost a couple of the frames of putting it together. But I did have this screen, and what this is just some real fine filter that came off an old tea bag. And it is a plastic, although the glues I'm using don't melt it, so it's some type of synthetic, and I'm not sure what, but it makes a really nice screen material for the slide screen in these. So once I get these all framed out for the glass, I went ahead and added the screen in this window and got it ready to go. Came back and put the center bars in the main windows and started the mullions in the round window at the top. Now this isn't exactly the way the half round window is. There is another round circle in it, which I'm not adding on to this. And each of these windows takes 13 pieces of plastic to get them framed in. So I'm going to go back around that side wall and just continue with framing that window in. And this one the same, I put the 4 outside corner pieces, then I come in and put the interior small frame that sits back in that frame in it. Then I put a center post in that window and do all the small center trim in it before I add glass. And this window, like most of the other regular 2-pane windows, take 13 pieces of plastic to put in place, so it takes a little time. And then gluing the styrene in place behind it, and that's one more wall ready to put in place. Now the other wall we're going to work on is this far end wall at the very end of the house off the end of the garage. This has a single double pane window in it, and just go ahead and cut the rough wood to the size and with the pitches of the roof that I need. And I just figured this out by going back and looking at the other roof lines and stuff. And I go ahead and put 45s on the 2 ends of that wall, which will meet up to the other square end walls. Come back and lay out where the window is going to be in the top. And this is the only window, so this is a little easier wall than some of the walls. And then once I go ahead and cut that out and flip it over, then I need to start putting this wall together. And I come back and use that same square stock to glue down to the walls, which connect the 2 pieces, plus keep it from warping once I get the paint into place as well. Now I'm going to go ahead and start working on these windows, and I'm going to do more of a how-to on this. It's not that complicated, and the pictures probably were self-explanatory before, but I'm just going to go into a little more depth in this. I don't do a whole lot of this where I actually show hands-on working on stuff. You know, and I use this really thick 8.80 styrene, and I'm just going to frame the whole outside of that window in next to the wood. And you know, I cut each piece. I just lay the piece down in place, put a pencil mark on it, and cut it. Then with my tweezers, I keep laying it into place, and I usually have to come back and trim just a tiny bit off of either ends to get it to fit in there. And once it fits, I like using this old-fashioned Testors model cement to go from wood to plastic. It just seems to have a really good adhesion when I use it for these two dissimilar materials together. And usually if I try to get this plastic off later on, parts of the wood will come off with the plastic when I try to remove it. So I do the top and bottom first. I glue them into place, and you know, I just go ahead and use the back handle of my tweezers and kind of burnish it down into place so it gets good adhesion. And it doesn't take this glue long to set up. The wood really does soak it up pretty good. And you know, then I come back and start cutting these side pieces and just doing the same thing. And when I put these into place, I try to put the leading outside edge of the wall into place and burnish it down at an angle so that any glue that squirts out to the back side where it won't be seen. Because I'm using the white of this plastic for the actual white of the window. I'm not going to paint these. If you do have a little bit of a gap in a piece when you glue it into place, you can use some white paint to come back and fill any little small gaps or anything that you have in these, and it helps hide any errors. I do have one window on this house and a previous window that I had done that I'm going to have to come back and just put a tiny bit of white paint in just a crevice. Now this also has a pane over a pane, so I'm coming back and marking the window where this centerpiece will go in between the two panes, and I'm going to cut this, and I just start using this other glue that molds plastic to plastic better. And like you see me here, I'm having to trim this 2 or 3 times to get a good snug fit in there. But once I get it in there, I use this other plastic weld glue, which is also Testors. I use several different types of this particular glue, but I just happen to have this Testors bottle out, so this is what I'm using for this window. And I just take my time to really make sure it's square and in place before I put glue on it and get it welded into place. And then that's all that I use this heavy plastic for. And then we'll start going to this other real thin plastic, and this is just a smaller plastic that I'm going to glue inside for actually the panes to set down in. And I just split the difference in the top and bottom. Now this is a 20 by 30 or 15 by 20, I can't remember what I took a picture of there and used, and I put the long side that parallel with the wall because it's not square piece, and let the tall piece set up so I have more glue area down in behind the plastic to glue the styrene pane to once I put the glass in this. And I do the tops and bottoms of each of these panels and just glue them into place. And this takes a little bit of time, and it's just individual pieces. There's a total of 13 pieces that I glue into place to do these windows when they're just one pane over one pane. If there's mullions, there's a lot of other pieces that go in, as you've seen on a few of the windows that I have done. But it just takes time to come through and just make sure you get a snug fit. And when I do trim off these tiny slivers at the end, my hands aren't as steady as I used to be. Tweezers are your best friend, but when you're cutting and doing a lot of things, it's really good just to use your finger as a guide. And you'll see me lay the knife edge against my finger onto the plastic to trim it, and that steadies the end of the knife so that I can get a good little tiny cut on it and not overcut the plastic. And this, it's just a long process. I mean, I sped these videos up so that you could watch me do this. And once they're into place, I just take the knife and make sure all the corners of all the various pieces line up with each other. And, that's the framing done. Now, here's just a picture of that end window all finished. And I come back and cut the styrene and go ahead and mount it into the windows. And, that's the end wall pretty much done. I mean, I'm going to have to come back and do some dull coat on some things to deaden things. Now, I did come back to some of these previous walls that I put together, and where these corners were that I had 45s and glued together, I did add some square stock into these corners just to beef it up a little bit, because I don't like handling these buildings and having them come apart after I've already glued them. I just don't like doing things twice, so just beef these up a little bit. So there you have this week's segment of Sparky's House. Once again this week I've been pretty busy with doing a lot of other things elsewhere in my private life, so I didn't get as far as I wanted to. I don't do as much video of me actually doing hands-on. I show a lot of pictures of steps that I go through, but I got to thinking maybe you all out there really need to know the steps and see me do things. I mean, I don't know. I've never had any questions or complaints about the way I put my videos together, but sometimes it does help to watch people doing things. So I may try to include a little more of that in my videos, but if that's something you'd like to see, add a comment below and tell me. I mean, I'm not going to do every single thing I do that way, but I could go a little more into some of the details I make and stuff like that by showing you actual hands-on rather than just show you the materials and the finished product when I'm done. Maybe that would make more sense to you and help you learn more to be able to scratch build some things. In any case, that's what it's all about, is just sharing this information with everybody so everybody can learn and scratch build buildings for their model layouts. So share this with other people out there in the hobby. Hit the like button down below, and it helps my analytics and gets me out there a little more. I'm a little over 550 viewers or subscribers at this point, and I'm not after all that. I just want to get my information out there and for people to learn, but the more my analytics help me get out there, the more people can find me and the more people can learn. So I guess that's all good, right? So in any case, grab some scratch materials, jump out there and build something for your model layout, and happy model railroading.